two-handed Gilda-spring over that railing. Up she went, up to that judge, and she's Gregory Milne. She says, "What's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of this?" And he was backing away from her, Will, like she was a poisonous snake.
Well,
and they came. So
judges treat truth that way, don't they?
Yes. Yes. So that's for my mother. I said, since we were one of 4 boys, I said, and the idea that if someone took on one of her kids, they took on my mother. I said, my mother was a lioness. She did not just go out and
She certainly was. She's a great warrior.
She didn't just yip and yap a little bit, Will. She would draw blood. She would nail them in a minute if they're messing with us. And it's that, Will. I said, and I want to publicly acknowledge my mother for the absolute support. Absolute support.
A Voice for Children wants to recognize her too. This is a great warrior. I don't know how many demonstrations I've been on with Frances Weidner and many others too at the same time, but Frances was always there. You know, she'd been in groups on the Capitol steps, on the courthouse steps.
But what she's so powerful about, Will, and I said she was the first, and then the next one I met that had that fire in him was Pamela Gaston. Yeah. And when we met 10 years ago after that meeting at the Capitol, if you can pull this shot in, this is a picture that was taken on the steps of the Capitol, a demonstration about the corruption that's going on in the system. Here I am and my mother. Will, you can see him in the back.
And that's Pamela just behind me there.
Right. And there's
Pamela made all these signs.
And Michael Marsh, he's here. Will Gall, Carlos Lucero is here. This was just one of the demonstrations. My mother has always been there, but not only there. And this is what I want to hold my mother up as an example. If I had 10 more of my mother and Pamela Gaston, and now Patricia Wishon, she's another fighter that fights with this intensity. And what is it that they do? They confront these totally corrupted bureaucrats, attorneys, some of them that are judges, who are openly stealing people's children and their lands and their property in these sham proceedings. And are they saying, "Oh, please, oh, Your Honor"? No, they're confronting them. My mother said, you should be ashamed of yourself to do that when she confronts them.
It's a matter of putting the truth on the record. And if you don't put it on the record in the court, there is no truth to show there. You have to put the truth on the record.
My mother.
They call him Your Honor. I said, to call you Your Honor, you have to have honor.
Yes, yes, Mother. And I said, what you did confronting them, and then Patricia Wishon, who I met later because of this involvement, that the fight that I've taken on. I said, and people say, "Oh, good luck, Roger." I said, this isn't just, Roger, I said, this isn't just my fight, people. This is every single citizen's absolute moral duty. I was telling my mother coming down here, every generation has an absolute moral duty. In fact, in my mind, you're immoral if you don't. To pass on to the next generation a clean environment, clean, limited constitutional government, and no debt. Because if you pass on a filthy environment and a police state that we've gotten ourselves into because of people's indifference, and a mountain of debt, I said, what is it that you're leaving? What legacy are you leaving to them? I said, nothing except
slavery.
Yes, I said, people, this whole country, the Declaration of Independence is the fundamental principle on which this country is built. And that principle is that the citizens are equal, that you cannot, in this country, we are not all equal. Some are big, some are small, some are rich, some are poor, but we are all equal.
One class.
But we are all equal before the law. When the rich man and the poor man walk into the courtroom, they are equal. Now, they're not equal in wealth and others, but before the law, they each have a right to come into that courtroom and to make a record of their injury. And this is the other, I want to give you this as a professional, former professional, that is as knowledgeable about this system as can be. Remember, people, all that courtroom is, it's a place to make a public record. Nothing comes before a judge until a petition or a complaint is filed with the clerk of the court. And in that, the party is asking for something. The other side, who is the other party, they have a right to admit or deny it. And if there's, and often there's no dispute. The cases are settled just on the pleadings without there ever being a need to go to court. But if there is some dispute, then the parties have the right to litigate that dispute, to go into a court with a judge who's a sworn neutral, to see that each side gets a fair hearing, to put on the evidence. That's the cornerstone principle of this country. Above every other, that's the very first word of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. Are they equal? No, but before the law. Right. Before the law, in the courts of this state, in this country, the citizens are the sovereign. When they come in, they are equals, and they have a full right to make a full record of their injuries. And before our time is up, my mother has sent an open letter. If you can catch that, do you see that? This is a letter that appeared in the
Oregon Observer.
In the Oregon Observer, but, and here in the top, my parents, mother and my father were featured in the Oregonian. Yes. In, I think, almost 10 years, 1997. They'd been married then 67 years, and so they were featured in the Oregonian. But this is the letter that my mother wrote to Gordon Hinckley, president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Orrin Hatch in the U.S. Senate, Gordon Smith in the U.S. Senate, Michael Mossman, then the U.S. Attorney, and all other, this was fellow Mormons and concerned and alarmed citizens of Oregon. I am the 91-year-old widow of Leo Weidner, retired deputy chief of the Portland Fire Department. We were featured in the living section of the Oregonian on December 3rd, 1997, and have also been featured in the Oregon Observer newspaper. My husband and I, he died in July of 1999, along with 3 of our 4 sons, Leo, Bruce, and Stephen, are Mormons. My husband and I, along with 2 of our 4 sons, Bruce and Stephen, have all served on church missions. My husband and I are also the parents of Roger Weidner, the 1998 Oregon Reform Party candidate for governor. For the past 11 years, my husband and I, along with hundreds, perhaps thousands of other shocked citizens, have witnessed firsthand, with stunned disbelief and outrage, the unbelievable abuse Roger and others supporting him have suffered at the hands of corrupt judges and police officers here in Oregon. The abuse has been in retaliation for their effort in exposing the judicial corruption in our state and federal court system. Roger has been repeatedly arrested and jailed, 290 days in all, sometimes violently, in my presence, for speaking out about the corruption. He has finally, after all these years, been allowed to freely testify in court. Weidner, without challenge or objection, Weidner has testified under oath, Rogers testified under oath, about the abuse and criminal conduct of attorneys and judges involved in the Kettelberg theft, New Wine Ministry, and the abduction and sexual abuse of 7-year-old Melissa Gaston by employees of the Oregon Child Services Division. Not a single sworn criminal charge that Roger or the others supporting him have leveled against those involved in this scandalous criminal behavior, either in court or on the air or in the newspapers, has been questioned or disputed by those he has named. Yet still, the lawyers, judges, and police who control our courts, our streets, and now it seems every aspect of our lives, brazenly flaunt the rule of law and continue to open protect disbarred attorney Milton Brown, who stole Kettelberg estate assets, attorney Ken Schmidt, who stole New Wine Ministry property, and known pedophiles in the Child Services Division who have sexually abused Melissa Gaston. Roger, a historian and lawyer and legal scholar, has repeatedly told all of us that in this country, since the Revolutionary War, the citizens are the sovereign political authority. He said that our founding fathers went to war to ensure that in this country the citizens would be ruled by the rule of law and not by the whim of corrupt, despotic tyrants sitting in colonial royal courts. Roger and that body said that both the state and federal government in this country are creatures created by the Constitution. He said if there was no constitution, there would be no federal government. If there's no state constitution, there would be no state government. Roger said that both the federal and state governments are run by elected or appointed public officials, and all public officials must take their oath of office. Roger also said that under both the state and federal constitutions, before the government can take anything from a sovereign citizen, that government must provide that citizen with equal protection of the law and due process of law. It is this equal protection and due process guarantee that is contained in the oath that all public officials take when they are sworn into office. The corrupt judges and police officers I have witnessed in our courts, instead of complying with their oath of office, are openly, publicly and aggressively protecting the thieves, and at the same time threatening, attacking, and jailing the victims of that thievery when they attempt to enter public courtrooms here in Oregon to make a record of their injury. Our prophet Joseph Smith said the day will come when our Constitution will hang as if by a thread, and if it's to be saved at all, it will be saved by the elders of the church. From the horrible corruption I have personally witnessed in our courts here in Oregon, the day has certainly come. It is time for all concerned citizens, particularly Mormons, heeding the advice of our prophet Joseph Smith, to speak up loud and clear to all public employees that we will not tolerate any corruption by our public employees. Further, that we will demand by our constant scrutiny that our public officials and public employees strictly follow their job description and comply with their oath of office. I sincerely ask that all of you to join with Roger and the rest of us fighting the corruption here in Oregon and around the country to help bring a swift and certain end to this dangerous and disgraceful situation in our court systems and restore constitutional protections to all citizens. Sincerely, Frances Weidner. That, people, is a powerhouse woman when she speaks. And who, Mother, has challenged anything that you've said at any time? Have you ever had anyone challenge you when you've called them corrupt or shamed them? Have you?
They start to, and I said, what did you say? Well, nothing.
See, it's the confrontation. Patricia Wishon has that. Susan Detlefson, that is so important. Pamela Gaston had that in spades, is that you confront them, people. This here, you can, if we are to save the Constitution, I call Mother the thread. I said that when they're, I'm not a Mormon, but in the Mormon church, when the Constitution hangs by a thread, people, the Constitution is hanging by a thread. If it wasn't for her supporting me, I would think it would be gone. The time is now, people. The time is now. What can you do? Confront your politicians. Say, we want this corruption over. That's the only thing that you have to say to them. Yes, that question. And one thing they will not say is they will not say, what corruption are you talking about? Thank you so much for your attention. Make copies and pass this around. And thank you, guests, for being guests.